And therein lies the crunch, speaking from my own experience in this process. This is the...
Yeah, and I do think, like I was thinking 2 out of 4, you know, that you have to attend to, and you can watch 2 recordings or something, you know. It's funny, you know, it's interesting to observe people's learning over time. There are many people who originally took the brief action planning online training who were somewhat engaged but not fully engaged, and then they took a year later, say, or a year and a half later, they took the workshop and were very engaged. And so, you know, I just find that interesting that, you know, sometimes it takes time, right? And then also interesting to, like Carly, for example, from Reno, they've done a lot of work, and she's come back to the conclusion that they have to start with ask, tell, ask as a change, you know, like that they can use brief action planning, but in order to really change some of the stuff they do, that they ought to start with ask, tell, ask more, which is fascinating to me. So, you know, she's taken the MI, she's taken the BAP, she's now a BAP trainer, and now she's come back to my team needs to start with the ask, tell, ask. And most of them have had BAP training, and most of them have completed their 3 practice and feedback sessions.
Yeah, that's interesting.
You know, just as an aside, sorry, this is Lee, we saw a similar when we were doing the nicotine cessation training, Marcia, how you're referencing, how you're speaking about how that circling back, we saw that a lot, where it looked like you do initial training, it looked like there was like nothing sitting there, and then you'd see this circle back of, with high interest. It was very interesting.
Well, may I, it's April Lawrence again, may I just sort of plow through, because you started to have that kind of conversation that you need to have with each other. I'm going to scream through the fears you shared to acknowledge them, and then I'll turn it back over to you, because that felt like a really sort of important clump, and then it went a little quiet. So I'm going to sort of dive back in for just a minute, and then I'll get through this as quickly as I can, and I'll turn it right back over to you. But I want to show you that you're all worried about much the same stuff, and maybe we can actually find a way through some of this together. Your fears. So what if no one ever speaks on a webinar? What if they just won't? Do any of you have anything you can offer the person who had this as a fear?
Sometimes I have had actually one webinar where, and this doesn't happen to me very often, I often can get like people talking, and so I was a little bit like, oh crap, right? And no matter, and what I realized is that I'm all prepped for this webinar, and they're in their clinical world or whatever world they're in, and then they come into this learning session, and sometimes they need more time to kind of flip over to the learning because they're still, their head's still in the thing. And then I also realized that don't make assumptions where people's knowledge is at, because I thought that their knowledge was higher. Yeah, so whatever, I just smiled, laughed, and I think I offered Tim Hortons coffee certificate to anybody who would actually say something, but I'm not even sure that worked.
So what I'm hearing, you acknowledged it, though. You acknowledged that silence, you know, whether it was, after a while, whether you used humor, but you acknowledged it to the group.
Yeah, without trying to, like, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess part of me, maybe, yeah, having that dialogue or opening that up at the very beginning to say I can't do this by myself, like this is an interactive webinar because it's brief action planning and I have to plan with somebody. So like opening that up and saying I really can't do it by myself. So I really hope that we can at least get a couple volunteers to help me with today or something like that, like because I would find that really difficult if no one ever, or we talked about like the calling on people, right? Just again putting that out. So I really need participation, and if no one volunteers, I'll just start picking people out. And I don't know. I'm comfortable doing that. I know not everyone else is. So.
The place where you will notice a space, you can call on people and people will usually bail you out for the exercises. It's when you try to do reflections of like, so I'm wondering what this means to all of you, and then just nothing comes back. Sometimes that will happen and it's not as much fun, but you've had some really good ideas about how you can reduce the possibility of that off the bat. And then also and you've also all had an opportunity to think about how to be comfortable with some dead airspace. And if you've got some, then you just smile and laugh and notice it and continue on. But you will all survive, I'm sure. There's some really good ideas about what to do. I'm going to keep us scooching, so we've got time for your conversation too. Someone else, so there was lots of anxiety about the technology. How do I make sure that they know how to use it? How do I make sure I know how to use it? And what if it just doesn't work? Does anyone have any thoughts about this? Will most of you be, I know that Marcia said that there's a WebEx system that is one that is should dominantly be available to all of you, but if you're internal to Northern Health, but might not be to some clinics. I'm wondering what you think about what you can offer each other around these concerns.
Well, I mean, most of us who do WebExes, we know to go on earlier to kind of play with that a bit. I mean, I would love to give you the, practice, but, I know that's not so hard to fit into your schedule, and then if you practice and you're not going to offer it right away, then you lose the skill anyway, so it has to be just-in-time learning. So I don't know, maybe those who are nervous, maybe those of us who are less nervous could team up for like maybe the first webinar or even before just to kind of ease the nerves, because technology can be, I think, very nerve-wracking.
That's kind, offering each other the chance to sort of try it out together, even if it's, just to sort of get the experience of briefly doing it on the technology that's available to you. And like with the face-to-face trainings, we've always said that, if your technology completely dies, you don't need the slides because you have the handouts. Kind of the same thing applies with webinars. Like if they've got the handouts in front of them, and you've got the handouts in front of you and they can hear your voice at the very least, you can walk them through the handouts. And so the same thing applies to this, so you don't get everyone to show up for an hour and then say, gosh, my technology's not working.
I guess we could also email.
But you still have to be able to make voice contact. So pardon me?
I was just going to say, I guess we could, in addition to the handouts.
I heard someone say.
I'm just thinking we could also send them the slides in case somehow your WebEx totally or their technology totally botches, right? And then you could at least say, well, I'm on slide 5 or whatever,
That's actually a really good idea. You could absolutely have them do it independently. That's actually a really clever response to that. That should the need be, then you can find a way around. And that's actually a really, really good idea. But we are a little more dependent on at least being able to make contact. But it's not, those are a lot of really good solutions for workarounds. So there were some I work from home concerns. What if my dog barks? What if someone comes to the door? What if the weather knocks out my rural wireless? So can I please facilitate with someone connected to a landline, like co-facilitate? So there's always a backup plan. So I also work from home, and so I understand some of these anxieties. What do people have to offer each other, or what are they thinking as they see this sort of set of particular working from home concerns?
That was me. That was Cindy. I had a situation where I was on a call and somebody came to the door and my dogs barked.
Yeah. And what happened?
Other than deep embarrassment, then I had to go into an explanation of why I had dogs in my office and that I worked from home.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
And then?
And then we just, I guess, just carried on.
Yep. And so, I mean, if it's you, you might think of ways to mitigate the possibility of this happening. If it's a nice day and the dogs could be in the yard, or if you could put a note on the door saying, you know, on a teleconference, which are word people understand as opposed to webinars. Every time I use the word webinar, my friends look at me really funny because a lot of people don't live in the world of webinars, but teleconferences they get. So maybe prevent knocking at the door. I will share with you the amusing visual of the day that I ran a webinar from inside my master bedroom shower stall with my bed quilt over top of me to try to muffle the sound of the fact that they were testing the fire alarms in my building that day. So that was awesome. So you can enjoy the amusing visual of that. So you find a way.
I love that. Thanks for sharing. That makes me feel so much better.
Yeah.
I love that.
That was a personal high point, low point, haven't decided, but yeah. So it can happen, and you might have to just apologize and explain. That's what I did for that one. I'm like, so this is happening, and we're going to go on anyway, and we did, and everyone was super sympathetic and fine. So embarrassed and explain might be the answer to this one. So there were some other fears that I'd like to get through. How can I find time to accommodate everybody's schedule? Like a number of you sort of said this with either with the learners, let alone your own. We'll get to your own in a moment. But how can we accommodate everyone's schedule? And as you look at that concern, what does it make you guys think?
You can't.
You can't. Yep. If you choose to record some of the webinars and give them an option of, you can watch one of the 3 that way, and we're going to do some phone practice together, or whatever you guys decide to go forward. But at some point, just like with a face-to-face, you just can't. And webinars still provide them vastly more flexibility than if they had to all get themselves to Prince George for 2 days or something. So it's a great way to try and do that, but you might just not be able to. And so I think you let yourselves off the hook a little bit with that one. So what if no one comes? Or even worse, nobody comes back. So I do the first one, and then no one comes back.
I think you drink your alcohol of choice first and foremost, and you say, I'm going to let this go.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea why they didn't come back, so I'm just going to let it go.
That is probably all you can do. And it might be good to find out why no one came back. You might be brave enough to ask yourself, or you might have a coordinator ask and say, so hey, was it that, there was a really nasty bus accident in the community and all hands were on deck, or was it just that the technology really was a barrier for that? Why didn't they? It might be nice to find out when you sober up. But I understand that instinct too. Yeah, I've never seen it happen. But I suppose it could. And yeah, at some point you don't know why. You just don't know why. So that's a lovely response to that. And what if I'm a poor webinar trainer and I don't make any sense to people? A number of you said this. And what does it make you think to see it? what I see, having listened to all of you practice teach and having kind of hung out online with you guys for, a few hours now, you're all really engaged, really compelling, and really clear people. You're all trained as face-to-face trainers, and so you know how to communicate this material. The medium is different, and so that's the practice teaching again, right, is to figure out how is the medium different and what do I need to do differently. But I cannot imagine, you might spend 15 minutes of the first 90-minute webinar being a not-so-great webinar trainer while you're finding your feet. But I have no doubt that you will all find your feet and that you know this material inside and out. So I understand why you might have this as a fear, but I don't have this as a fear for any of you. Because I see a group of really smart, really good trainers who get this. And just, you might need to find your feet with a new medium, but I'm not terribly worried about this for all of you. And those of you who are most concerned, you've heard one of your colleagues say maybe we could practice together first. And that might be a great idea to build your confidence, but all of you are well on your way to this not being an issue. Not to dismiss the fear, because I totally get it, but I don't have this fear for you at all. Whoops, there are two. What if I can't feel a connection to the learners or any excitement they have for the content? This was for someone who obviously gets real joy in face-to-face training and sort of feeds off that relationship. And what if you just can't have that relationship through this medium? As you look at that fear, what do you think? So there's my tolerance for dead air, in case you're curious. That's how much time I can leave for something before I begin to panic as a trainer online. And, well, all I know is in the time that we've been together, I feel like something of a connection to all of you guys. I'm a little unclear to some extent the connection you have to the content, but we've got your feedback that those of you who are willing to fill out feedback gives me some indication. I feel like I ask you on a regular basis what you feel, and you're gracious enough to respond to me. So you can ask them, and asking them might give you a little bit more of an idea. And then I have had webinar groups that I just dread because I don't have a lot of this with them, and I show up and I soldier through my 90 minutes, and I bring my best jazz hands. I do my very, very best as a facilitator. And it's hard. It's hard, but if you show up with a belief in the material and that even if they get a third of what you're giving them, then they've got an opportunity to be a different kind of practitioner than they would have been if you hadn't been there at all for them. Sometimes this happens and it's just hard. But like I said, all of you are such engaging people and so clearly committed to the process that you might just have to soldier through a couple of them, and they're not fun, but they're no reflection of you. What if webinars are harder to organize and deliver well, and we just don't ever bother to get this off the ground as a mechanism in Northern Health? What if it's just too hard and we just don't bother to do it? I'm really curious what you guys think about that one.
I'm going to challenge that. This is Lee. Just because I've worked with physicians for so long and the whole move towards telehealth and whatever that may look like, whether it's a phone call or a webinar, and knowing when they surveyed folks in terms of patients, the willingness and the will and the want to, and hoping that we as practitioners catch up with their will and want and the way they're connecting remotely on many different levels. It almost, for me, it puts my feet to the fire saying, okay, it's time for me to get past my fears on this, because indirectly the people that I serve, we trace it all the way back to the patient, are looking for this. They're looking for ways to connect that are not face-to-face because of the realities of their life and their schedules as well.
That is a fantastic challenge, and in the sense that's a really, really good point, is that actually more and more of this is actually being asked for. So now maybe it will just flop. but I think Lee's point is very strong and that it probably just won't. I'm going to speed on a little bit just because I want to make sure that I have a chance to turn it back over to you. That there won't be an uptake for the practice and feedback calls, and no one will actually ever use these skills in their work. I'm just going to say that that's not a fear unique to webinars, that we find this from face-to-face as well. And the spirit of MI would tell us that we legitimately cannot make anyone do anything. And you will do a training and you will reach 30% of your audience will have an absolute epiphany, and this will transform their working lives. And the rest of them might go, meh. It's a possible risk. It is. I believe very strongly in the materials and how they're presented, and that I think that if people are receptive, then I have seen people like move heaven and earth to learn these skills and get there for them, and some people not so much. So this fear exists just as much in face-to-face as it does in webinar. It is the eternal fear that you won't make a difference. It's possible, but I don't think it's any different with face-to-face than it is with webinar. Does anyone else have a thought on that?
I think the more we create practice and feedback as an expectation in this training, and then people have success with that, so like the completion certificates and stuff, and their leadership is supportive of that, then I think the better it'll happen. And the fact that we can actually offer like centralized support for it has made a difference. I think and I think some people have told me they mention practice and feedback sessions a fair bit in their when they facilitate brief action planning, and that they think it really makes a difference versus others don't mention it as much. So it might also be the belief of the trainer around whether people ought to or should, or it's going to be beneficial for them to come to practice and feedback sessions. So, and I think for myself, I just have to remember to put the effort into making sure they are organized and communicated well, so that I don't miss trainings and things like that. You know, sending people invites and things. But I do find those groups who are supported by leadership tend to be the ones that finish, or if there's peer support. And it happens sometimes depending on whether there's a real connection to the trainer or there's a real connection to the materials. But
you are 100% correct that how the trainer sells it during the training makes a massive difference. I just had a crash learning in this. I had a group where I really didn't emphasize it at all for all sorts of reasons that were more complicated. So I usually really plug it, and I didn't, and almost none of them are coming to the practice and feedback. So my little experiment, my highly unscientific N of 1 experiment suggests that you are dead right there. And the more organizationally you can support it, the more this will happen. So there's lots and lots behind you. So there's a concern as trainers simply having the capacity to do these and having the capacity to prep for these is a source of concern. I'm going to actually then, I think, yeah. So given that last concern is about your sort of position and capacity as trainers, I'm just going to fly right to Marcia. You guys were going to talk about what it's going to be like in Northern Health, what options you have, what's next, what do you need. So I'm just going to leave that fear hanging because I suspect that that's going to form the basis of some of what you would like to talk to folks about. So I'm just going to stop talking, and I'm going to hand it over to you, Marcia. You're on mute, Marcia. I'm not sure if you know. I see you on mute.
Oh, can you hear me now?
I can totally hear you now, and you still look on mute to me, so never mind. That's just technology being weird. So I'm going to hand it right over to you, Marcia.
Okay. So April and Roxanne, first of all, I just want to say thank you for all the practice and feedback sessions you've done for that really, without your guys' help, there's no way we could provide centralized support. And that being said, I don't want you guys to feel like you have to fill every gap there maybe is in brief action planning, and then with the MI coming in as a training, that could get more complicated. So I think we have to kind of just figure it out for next year, what kind of things that you guys would like to do and what makes sense to do over time. You know, so I think we could talk about that now. I think we have an opportunity. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. And Cindy and Lee, I know that you guys are focusing on training physicians a fair bit, and I know that's kind of unexplored territory also. So maybe, I don't know if we could probably have a conversation around that. I think all of us would be interested in the physician conversation about, I don't know, possibilities, I guess. So whoever wants to say something first, whatever's on your mind.
I'm thinking.
I'd hate to lose the practice and feedback session support. So for me, from the two of you, and it has really helped that Joanna Patterson also is now providing more support. I can't seem to get Janice and Cindy Edwardson to provide, or Gerd, Cynthia, to provide support on a regular basis, and I'm hoping I can get more people in our little circle, so it's less work over time. But so to me, though, that's a pivotal thing because it supports all trainers. So I don't know if you know, I don't know if I think for you guys the webinars, because we do them for the QI, are maybe less intimidating. Maybe I should stop there and let you answer whether or not that's true.
Yeah, Marcia, for me, yeah, I don't, like I said, I'm the one that actually with like just the capacity to prep and that kind of thing. So I'm not overly concerned as long as I just build it in. And I think the practice of feedback sessions are pivotal, and I have no intentions to not continue to support those. So I think I find those almost easier to support than doing the actual training. So
yeah, well, and I do appreciate how much you've done considering you know, considering the limited support you've been provided, you know.
I find I think they're really helpful for people, and when I get off the phone with them, I feel good about the service that we're providing, because I really do. Anybody that gives feedback is saying, okay, these are really helpful. So they're important.
Yeah, I think the feedback challenge just really create a safe environment for people to practice. So even though they have to get to the first one before they realize that, because I've had lots of people be very hesitant to come to the first one. So I was, for Northern Health, like Cindy and Lee, to me you'll just follow, like you just did a training, Cindy, for the Fort Nelson physicians. I don't know if you're going to follow that up with coaching or whatever, but I think you guys will just, when it makes sense, I guess you're going to just do more training or with physicians. And I mean, it's not like you can't email me and ask, and if I haven't heard from you guys in a while, then I'll email you. I am really hoping, Lee, that with this shared care that there's an opportunity to provide more training to physicians, but to be honest, I'm hoping that no one asks me to support that.
Okay.
Because I just, like with the number of trainers and then MI, I just can't, like I can go there a little bit, but I can't go there a lot. Okay. And when I go there a little bit, it seems like people then just put it back on me. And I get that. I really do get why, but it's just that, you know, I only have a little bit of space. So for me, if we do one webinar next year, to me that's a success. Honestly, with everything that's going on with Northern Health, the amount of face-to-face trainings there are, the MI trainings, supporting people getting their MI, people keeping their brief action planning, exploring a couple things with the people you've already trained, like Kitimat, like Lee, I'm wondering, you know, is there an opportunity to expand into terrace with the care?
Well, there is, but my suggestion would be feet on the ground first a little bit down there. I'm connecting with, we've had a changeover in acute care with leadership in acute care. So behind the scenes, I'm working with that individual. And you mentioned about pulling in a physician. So we're very close to being able to attach a physician with moving forward with brief action planning within acute care. And I know there's the whole community piece as well, but I think there's a lot of richness still, and I don't think it would take much to actually mobilize it and move it up to that higher level at KGH. And then, yes, definitely spread this learning to terrace. I know that there's interest with physicians. It might look a little different, you know, but there's interest with physicians.
And Roxanne, I mean, for me, the webinar series, if I can help you somehow with the stroke collaborative, just let me know. And I don't know what timing for yourself and for that collaborative is the best. And I know that you're just going to a 0.5, so it's not like you really know what that capacity looks like. So I think you just have to tell me what you think you want to do in the next year or what's possible.
That's a really good point. It's still quite up in the air as to what I know I will be able to do. With the stroke collaborative, I'll just have to touch base with them again, and I'm thinking probably sometime before the end of March as something they were asking for, but I need to just revisit that with them.
Okay.
But thanks very much for your support in that, because it'll be really helpful to have you help co-facilitate that training.
Sure. If you're going to go first, then I'll go second. I was going to do one. I wasn't sure whether I was going to do it in April or June, May, June. So.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That's a start of a plan then.
Cindy, do you have anything that you want to ask or say or?
Yeah, well, I think at this point for me, like I just finished a 4-hour BAP face-to-face with the IPT in Fort Nelson. I did kind of a 1-hour dabble with some of the doctors up there, so that might be an opportunity. They're already engaged in some PSP module work, so having another training, I don't know if they would be ready for that. The doctors in Chetwynd, again, they're engaging in PSP module learning, so maybe towards the fall doing a BAP training, a webinar, just trying it out.
Yeah, and even if you want to just take the content and do it face-to-face, you know, like if you think that's better for the Chetwynd physicians.
Yeah, well, you know, I've got a pretty strong relationship with them at this point, so I think they would be okay with the webinar. And to be honest, I'd really like to get more experience and practice with using the webinar format, because with my role, I do Tumblr, Chetwynd, and Fort Nelson, and I could really utilize the webinar process if I was more proficient. But I'm one of the ones that put in about fear if I'm on a call and the technology fails. You know, I'm dead duck in the water kind of thing. So I'd definitely like to get more experience.
Well, maybe there's an opportunity for you to peek in on one of the webinars we do. And also, I was just thinking if one of us is co-facilitating a QI one sometime, maybe the topic wouldn't be something that would be boring for you, you know, since that's what you do, you know.
That sounds good.
Okay, well, I just wanted to let everybody know that I realize that things are tight and that we'll come up with a plan. And of course that, you know, I love plans because they guide you, but then they also change over time too, right? So, you know, and again, I see it as a success if we do this once and we learn from it for next year. I really do. I'm not just saying that because I think the benefit of us, so thank you for participating, and the benefit for some of us to be here is that we now have, I think, had a good exposure to the presenting this webinar. And it's not, that doesn't mean other trainers in Northern Health can't also do this. You know, it's just that they would need a bit of support maybe before they did it. But so it's not like it's just up to us to provide. And I think it's good to start slow anyways, so that we can get some feedback from people. And I actually think this is going to be a really rich learning experience for some people. And it is very hard to get to Prince Rupert and Haida Gwaii. And well, it's great, Cindy, that you go to Fort Nelson. I would have put Fort Nelson on that list, and then places like Stikine, they're never going to get anybody going up there, you know, or Dees Lake, whatever you want to call them. So,
although, yeah, although the HSA, Cormac goes up there a few times a year, and that, just putting out there, it's not, he has brought practice support coaches with him or other people that are maybe want to do some work, just putting it out there.
Oh, good.
But webinars, yeah, great to have this option.
Well, and it's April speaking again. I'll point out to you that you have all now attended 3 90-minute webinars, and so you know what the requirements, if it's constructed that way, feels like, and how it's doable or not doable, or what's awkward or isn't awkward. And we've both done really quick back-to-back ones, and there's been a 2-week gap, so you've experienced both of those things, and hopefully remembering your own experience can kind of help you plan for others. Like there's been some bump in attending all of them in a perfect fluid way, but there's ways to accommodate that, and so you can all, hopefully you guys can imagine what it's like to do this. Just given that we've got just a couple minutes left, I will scream ahead to checking in on our goals. Remember on the very first day, a million years, 2 weeks ago, I asked you what your goals were for this webinar series, and this is what you said: to do BAP online and imagine how you might do it with geographically spread out rehab programs. And so in terms of very specific application, imagining how you might apply it. Thinking about the logistics of distance learning was important to you. How many hours, how long is a session, the time between sessions. You've had the opportunity to experience those things and think about them. Again, the principles in your face-to-face training all still apply to webinar, and so you've got the guide for that. You were wondering what it was really like to deliver a webinar, and so hopefully you had a bit of an opportunity to try that out. And how will this be received by an acute environment was something that some of you were wondering. And perhaps now you've sort of been the participants in a webinar and have had a chance to sort of give a little bit of practice delivering it. Maybe you can imagine that more clearly. So I'm wondering, looking at these goals, what did we leave undone? What are the gaps that we can still help you address?
This is Lee, and I have to say I need more practice. So thank you, Marcia, and for other team members who may be open to that.
April, do you ever do a pre-assessment survey with the webinar group?
Oh, yes, we do exactly the same pre-training assessment with the webinar group that we do with our live face-to-face group. So yeah, we do exactly the same one. And if you're curious what that is, I am operating under the assumption that it's part of your face-to-face action. But Danielle, I know you're on mute, but if you can hear us, and I'm assuming we could share that with Marcia if you don't have it.
Hi, yeah, Marcia, we do have a Word version of the questions that you can plug into, like Simple Survey or SurveyMonkey or something like that to send out for webinars. I don't know.
Yeah, that would be great if you could send it, Danielle.
Okay, yeah, I'll do that.
And perhaps we can just pop it on the materials page for this webinar series so everybody can access it?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Cool. And what other need has sort of gone unmet in the time we've been together? Well, hearing nothing and acknowledging that it's 9:31, so I've now kept you at least a minute past when I agreed we would end. And some of you in your assignments mentioned the importance of starting and ending on time, and I absolutely agree. Starting on time can be a little bit bumpy, but ending on time is pretty easy to do. So I will thank all of you ever so much for coming and joining in this experiment. And please, please make sure you keep me and us here at CCMI updated on your experience of delivering webinars and let us know how this has or hasn't been helpful. You'll be getting a feedback survey, and we would desperately love it if you would fill that out. It really helps us do everything we do better, and so I appreciate that so much. So thank you, all of you. Thank you so much for being here, and enjoy the rest of your day and your week.
There was one question in the chat box about whether or not the MI training that's coming up for Northern Health would be useful for strengthening BAP facilitation skills. And I don't know if that's a question for Marcia or for April.
Sorry, I now see the question in the chat box. Thank you, Danielle. I missed it. So are you thinking, well, Lee, when you typed that, were you thinking of the online MI training that's being delivered, that if you sort of lurked around the edges, it might strengthen your online skill delivery? Or what were you thinking when you asked that?
Cognizant of time, thank you for posing that question. I was not sure actually how the MI was being delivered. I just heard reference to it, and knowing that anything we can do to support our skill base so that we're better facilitators, I threw that question out. So anything that I could participate in at any level, I think would add.
Well, it's true that, I mean, it doesn't really address facilitation skills. It is literally training in using motivational interviewing to work with people to support their desire, their own motivations and willingness to change. So it is sort of the spirit of MI sort of manifested with the skills to back it up. I use most of my MI skills with practitioners who are reluctant to face changes in how their environment at work is changing. So you might actually, some of you might find it very supportive as a skill development if you're practice coaches or working in that context. I do most of my MI with healthcare providers. So it might very well be a training you'd like to look into. It will not specifically address BAP facilitation, but I just think they're good skills to have as you move through the world, but I'm hugely biased. But it might be worth investigating the ability to attend and what's being offered, because they're great skills.
Yeah, I think there might be MI trainings offered in Terrace in the new year.
Oh, that would be wonderful, because I'm thinking in terms of with the specialists and physicians, exactly the practitioners I work with, and so thank you. I'll connect with Marcia then after this. Yeah.
And I know Alice is actually, they're doing an experiment in Northern Health of actually offering MI training online via webinar with practice and feedback. And so I don't know if that would be something that would be of interest to you. And I don't know how it's enrolled.
Full right now.
Ah, okay, fair enough. So, I thought it might be.
Yeah, for sure, Lee, in the new year, because there's a few people who are going to become trainers, right? So they're going to be, there's 4 trainers up there now, or there will be at the end of, after the beginning of March. So then that will, I know they'll be offering training, so that'll be good. You can attend to that.
Thank you, guys.
And Marcia, are the coaches still can they be involved in that MI?
Yep. You mean the MI train the trainer?
Yeah.
They can be, yeah. As long as the prerequisites are done.
Okay, great.
And the prerequisites, to be clear, the prerequisites for the MI Train the Trainer are that you've done the MI training and that you sort of can can demonstrate a decent level of motivational interviewing skills, which we ask that you do via a recording of sort of you doing like a real play with a friend or a colleague, or sort of to say, or even a role play, but sort of a spontaneous demonstration of MI skills that are at a good foundational level. So that's the prerequisite for the MI Train the Trainer.
We can talk about it.
Okay.
Well, is there anything else you sort of need from each other before you go today?
Oh, that was great. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh,
That was good. Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, thanks everybody. So we'll wait till everyone hangs up. But thanks so much for being here with us.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Danielle, can you hear me?
I can, yep.
There you are. So is there anything else you need from me before we shut this bad boy down, or what can I do for you?
No, I'm going to post those questions and send out a follow-up email. But I forgot to start the webinar right away.
I don't think that I'm sure that Lee is perfectly fine with that not having been recorded for posterity. So
Okay.
I think we're probably good, because it's a great learning opportunity. But I don't know that she's going to be heartbroken that she can't review it.
And we didn't post anyone else's either, so.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that's absolutely perfect. Yeah, and we'll throw what there is up there for them, and it's all about technology, right? Which is great when it's great, and a struggle when it's not. As I'm realizing, like, I can't, because I'm on Doug's computer, I don't know why, like I can't mute myself, I can't type into the chat box, I can see the panel, but every time I click on it, I just get like a pingy sound, like I can't do anything, and I have no idea why.
Yeah.
So technology is magical. So, yeah. But thank you so much for having my back with all the technology stuff, and being willing to leap in and sort of answer questions about what they have access to. And so, yeah, so if you could let me know when the feedback comes in, if any feedback comes in, and that would be great. And if there's anything you want to sort of shoot me an email about that I can do differently or do better that you sort of learned watching, then I would love to hear that from you too.
Okay. This was the last one, right?
This was the last one. We are
Okay.
done with this experiment.
So I'll send out the final day.
Please. That would be absolutely awesome.
All right.
Great. Thank you so much, Danielle.
Yeah, no worries. Have a good day.
Okay. Always lovely to hear your voice. Bye now.
Bye.